A week of debates is shifting the direction of political races in Indiana and across the nation. All three candidates for governor state their case to Hoosier voters. Then all eyes turn toward the bottom of the ticket in the presidential race in the only vice presidential debate. Our political insiders are weighing in on these debates and where these campaign trails go from here. Plus, the City-County Council faces tough decisions for the city of Indianapolis with a budget to pass. It's all coming up on this edition of Indianapolis This Week. And thanks for joining us on this edition of Indianapolis This Week. I'm Todd Connor. The three candidates for governor all on one stage sharing the spotlight. This week, we saw the first of three debates for the candidates to become Indiana's next governor. But did this debate really sway Hoosier voters? We're now only 23 days away from Election Day, and many voters may have already made up their minds. RTV6's Norman Cox has a recap of Wednesday's debate.
Mike Pence, your opening remarks.
Mike Pence made numerous references to his roadmap for Indiana and told viewers to log on to it to see his campaign position.
And the next governor of Indiana needs to make job creation job one. And to do that, we've laid out in our roadmap for Indiana, which is available at roadmapforindiana.com right now.
But Pence one time appeared to need a roadmap himself when he forgot what county Zionsville is in when making a reference to a local youth program.
Or whether it be promoting early intervention programs, like the Youth Assistance Program here in Hamilton County.
John Gregg challenged Pence in strong words when he attacked him for his failure to support the rescue of Chrysler and GM and for Pence's free trade stance, which Gregg says has cost Indiana jobs.
You didn't support the auto industry. Two American companies, Chrysler and General Motors. There were 125,000 jobs at stake in the state of Indiana when it came time to loan money to the automobile industry. As a free trader, you have voted and decimated the steel industry.
Pence defended the action of Governor Daniels and the legislature in enacting a right-to-work law, but Gregg and Rupert Boneham defended unions, with Boneham pledging to reverse the new law.
Remembering when we passed this right-to-work law in '58 and we repealed it in '64, I would stand up and repeal the right-to-work law.
Boneham also promised to end I-STEP, while Gregg promised to end what he called the war on education. Pence promised to help students with college affordability by promoting programs to help them graduate in 4 years.
Our political insiders join me now, Abdul Hakim Shabazz and Kip Tu. And gentlemen, thanks for joining us.
Good to be here.
I guess first off, Kip, who won the debate? I'm going to guess your guy, right?
Wait a second.
Here's a shock.
The Spider System's telling me I think I can figure this one out.
Maybe a shock to you all, but I think John Gregg won. And here's why I really do believe it. John was on the offensive all evening long, I think, and it was something that he needed to do. And it looked to me like Mike Pence was trying to run out the clock. He even spoke more slowly than he normally does so he could drag out his answers so the debate would be shorter, I think, was part of what Mike Pence's strategy was on this debate. And I think that because of it, you know, guys who hold on to a lead or think that they have a lead. I made the analogy on the blog that it's like the Green Bay Packers last week and last season. They had a lead and they hung on to it, and they were playing not to lose. And I think Mike Pence was playing not to lose here, and I think he clearly lost the debate and probably lost the momentum on the campaign.
You think that was really a strategy to play the clock, or some believe maybe he just didn't know his game well enough?
No, I think the Pence strategy was basically go in and do no harm. You know, basically you've got a comfortable double-digit lead by all credible independent polling that's been out there so far. No need to do something to go ahead and mess that up. Could Pence have done a few things differently? Yeah. You know, maybe smiled more, a little bit more. Yeah, sure. But you know, let's face it. You know, you're not going to out-personality John Gregg, so there's no point in trying to do it. I think John Gregg. I think at the very least at the most it was a draw, because I don't think this race has fundamentally changed the dynamics of the race, because John Gregg needed to walk in here and basically with every answer hit everything out of the park. And I'm sorry, he just didn't do it.
When the other side says it's a draw, then you know we won, right? I mean, I'm saying we won. He says it's a draw. You can draw your own conclusions there, but usually he would say his guy won if he thought his guy won, and it wasn't. It wasn't a draw.
It was a draw because fundamentally this race has not changed. John Gregg needed to basically hit a grand slam every single time, and John didn't do it. Plain and simple.
Number one. Mostly partisans watch these debates. And so what happens is after the debate, the coverage that the debate gets for the independent voters who don't have time at 7 o'clock on a Wednesday night to tune in. So it's not like the television commercials that are inundating you and those other things. And so what John needed to do is what he did do, which was change to gather the momentum for the campaign, and he clearly did it.
He's got two more chances to hit some grand slams. Is it the right strategy to play it safe on the first of 3 debates? I mean, does he have a big enough lead to do that, really?
I think he does, because number one, first of all, the second 2 debates, what is it, South Bend and Fort Wayne? Yeah. I mean, the audience will be nowhere near as big as it was here in Indianapolis, so you won't necessarily get the viewership. And John Gregg really hit it out of the park. There would generate a lot more buzz, a lot more excitement about people up in that part of the state. I didn't see it happen from watching it. I mean, just that simple.
Well, polling showed that John had more room to grow up in northern Indiana, and so I think that the South Bend and Fort Wayne debate are going to be able to help him accomplish.
That's just a very polite way of saying he's that much further behind. I just want to...
He has more room to grow. The people up there don't actually know Mike Pence as well because he was a congressman from central Indiana, and they don't know John Gregg because he was a speaker from southern Indiana, so they don't know either of the candidates. And neither of them are polling great, but John Gregg has more room to grow, and I think if people tune in up there and the coverage afterwards, it is going to help John Gregg.
You wouldn't know it from hearing us talk, but there was a third candidate. Rupert Boneham was there, Libertarian candidate. Well-spoken, Paul Ryan, first debate ever type of guy. He held his ground and got out his message that he wanted. Is his... will he be significant enough to pull many votes away from Pence or from John Gregg to make this race a little bit closer?
What's interesting to me, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what's interesting to me is that the Libertarian Party, if you believe their ideology, they've got the wrong candidate. Rupert Boneham and a couple of things that he talked about was not even close to being libertarian. So I know that it's kind of a publicity stunt for the Libertarian Party to have this guy. He's well known. He's been on a Survivor TV show, and so he's got some celebrity status. So I think that's why they did it. But they've sold their soul with respect to this candidate.
I disagree, because that's just like there are different degrees of Republican, different degrees of Democrat, there are different degrees of Libertarian.
Oh, really?
Yes, there are.
It's not big enough for them to have different degrees.
You got to know them and hang out with them to realize that. I mean, and the thing about Rupert is you can't make Rupert Boneham be somebody other than he is. We've all seen candidates get up there and beat people they're not, and it shows. I mean, Rupert doesn't believe in right to work. He made that clear from the day he announced. So he's not saying anything that's inconsistent. I think his soft-spoken demeanor. He's not a policy person. He's not going to go too far in the weeds on policy. But I will give him credit on the one line that he used. Even though I don't necessarily fully agree with, he said, "Life isn't a test. Life is an essay." And his little sage bits and things like that will resonate with a lot of normal, common people. Now, granted, shave, trim the hair just a little bit, and maybe run again in 4 years.
Well, look, he is a delightful guy. I didn't want to give the impression that I didn't think he did a good job. I thought he did a very good job. Yeah. My criticism was the Libertarian Party giving up on their principles on a guy who I think doesn't follow libertarian principles. But be that as it may, it's a publicity stunt for them. It may garner them a little bit more attention than they otherwise would get.
I want to give you each 30 seconds to tell me where the campaigns go from here.
I think it continues to move on. I think John Gregg is drawing contrasts with Mike Pence. There's now some independent expenditures painting Mike Pence as to what he really is, which is an extremist. I've been saying it for months and months and months. He is a Tea Party aficionado, right-wing warrior for Christian social issues, and the voters need to know that, and I think that's what they're going to find out.
If you're the Pence people, you keep doing what you're doing because it's gotten you ahead this far. No need to change course, just as we're getting toward the finish line. If you're the Gregg people, I guess you try to operate on all full thrusters, if I can use a cheesy Star Trek analogy, and do whatever you can and throw the Hail Mary long bomb and hope and pray somebody listens to you between now and Election Day.
All right, we'll leave that there. We do have 2 debates to go in the governor's race. On Wednesday, the candidates will meet in South Bend at 7 o'clock. Then on Thursday, October 25th, they'll hold their 3rd and final debate in Fort Wayne at 7 o'clock. Both debates will be aired live on HTSN. We'll have full recap on them. That's RTV6 News at 11. Well, there was another big debate this week you may have heard of that had the eyes of the nation on it. It was the only debate between the vice presidential candidates. After the break, our political insiders will weigh in on the performances of Paul Ryan and Vice President Joe Biden. There were no holds barred during their first and only debate as the vice president and his Republican opponent took each other on. President Obama was criticized for being too passive in his first debate with Mitt Romney, but Vice President Joe Biden seemed determined not to make that same mistake. Much of the debate centered around foreign policy and last month's attack on the American consulate in Libya. Ryan slammed the administration for a slow response.
It took the president 2 weeks to acknowledge that this was a terrorist attack.
With all due respect, that's a bunch of malarkey, because not a single thing he said is accurate. As they learned more facts about exactly what happened, they changed their assessment.
All right, our political insiders join us again. And Abdul, to start off with you this time. Many saw this debate as a tie. Why or why not?
Well, I look at it like this. This really wasn't a debate. This was sort of the political equivalent of WWF wrestling. Or I guess WWE wrestling is what they would be now. I mean, I was expecting Paul Ryan to come out with a chair and hit Joe Biden on the back of the head, and Joe Biden to reach to his tights and knock him across the face.
That would have been good TV.
Yeah, that would have made for really good TV. I mean, I thought it was lively. I thought it was spirited. Looking at the, some of the commentary from both Democrats and Republicans, they cheered their guy. They complained about the other guy. You did not see that in the first debate, because even Democrats had a hard time defending the president's performance. I would argue in this type of debate, if you're Joe Biden, your job was, for your base to stop the hemorrhaging. And I think that he did and really energized a whole lot of the Democrats. And he also had sort of the side benefit, too. A poll came out after the debate showing of independent voters, Joe Biden 50, Paul Ryan like 34 or 35. So I think from that perspective, Joe Biden did well. I do think Paul Ryan, looked vice presidential, go in, once again, go in, do no harm, don't lose the momentum.
Well, you got a guy who's had 18 presidential debates and a guy who's had no debates on this level, and you would expect Biden to maybe come out the winner on this, but it was pretty solid both ways.
Well, I disagree with the premise of your question. I mean, I think he pointed out the independent voters, the folks that vote most matter. The CBS poll said it was 50 to 30, so it was a pretty clear victory for the Obama campaign and for Vice President Biden. And I think that, the other part of the thing that you talked about was that he was on the defensive on Libya, and I would agree the administration's a little bit on the defensive on Libya, but you look at all the other foreign policy points, he absolutely destroyed him on Afghanistan. I mean, Paul Ryan looked like he was a deer caught in the headlights when the vice president looked at him and said, "You want to send more American troops into those places in Afghanistan?" He said, "Well, it's not safe." He said, "Well, we're sending more troops, Afghan troops, into those ports." And you could just see it on Paul Ryan's face. He said, "Oh, I got had there." And then you talk about Iraq and Iran and Syria. The American people don't want another war in the Middle East, and those guys, the Romney-Ryan ticket, are being bellicose, and I think it hurts them with the American people this time. So I think is why you saw in the poll results from the independent voters, they're a little bit scared of these guys being bellicose.
Biden kind of did a little name dropping too to show the fact that he's been in the center of it all and been in the same room with some of the other folks making these big decisions, especially these foreign policy decisions.
And I think that was also interesting too, particularly when you have Martha Raddatz, who does the foreign policy stuff for ABC News. Right. Sort of trying to add to his street cred. I think the big thing that like I said, the people walk away from is sort of re-energize Democratic base. And I think it's interesting. Bill Clinton, who was actually in Indianapolis, this past weekend, he gives a speech at the Democratic Convention. He saves Barack Obama. Joe Biden on the debate floor comes in and debates Paul Ryan, saves Barack Obama. Eventually, the president is going to have to save himself. You can't keep counting on these other guys to sort of do it for you, which is why I think this actually maybe puts even more pressure on the president to deliver in his second debate.
Well, politics is a team sport, and so very few people get elected on their own.
Yeah, but a different team means you pull your fair share of the weight.
Right. I'm not disagreeing with you. I guess I'm not completely disagreeing with you, but because Barack Obama didn't have his best performance, and I think everybody's acknowledged that. What's interesting, of course, is that Democrats can admit when their guy doesn't have a very good night, but like Republicans don't recognize evolution, global warming, they can't admit when Paul Ryan got schooled, and he got schooled in this debate on
I went on 2 out of the 3.
They had a couple of good lines I thought that stood out. Paul Ryan had the line about, he said, where is it? I think the PP knows that sometimes your words don't come out of your mouth the way that you mean them.
And then Joe Biden says, but I always mean eventually what I say. Hey, I thought that was actually a pretty good sort of back and forth, because I was kind of wondering when sort of the gaffe stuff would start to fly out of there.
They were both well schooled. I mean, you could tell they were loaded for bear, and each had their arguments set.
Here's the other point I want to make about it is the Republicans criticized the president, for not being assertive enough in the first debate, and the media also gave him the same criticism. And then the Republicans turned around when Joe Biden was aggressive, and they say he's too aggressive, he was being rude. Well, I don't know where you're supposed to be on these debates in that instance.
Maybe they should just ask not to have split screens, because on one you have President Obama looking a little aloof and not necessarily looking straight at Mitt Romney, and the other one you have Joe Biden being so theatrical over there and throwing up his hands and smiling.
That's kind of what I do when I have to go with him.
Together. Just put a split screen here and see the expressions on his face.
But some have been critical of that. You know, him seeming like,
silly.
you know, he was... You know.
It's silly. He was a human response to when someone was full of baloney, or as he said, full of malarkey, right? Or I'd use another phrase if we were on TV.
I think he wanted to.
I think he almost did at one point in time. No, but to get back to what Kip said, I mean, he wasn't Al Gore, you know, with sort of the perpetual sighs over and over and over again that just really ingrained and got on a lot of people's nerves. I mean, you should always assume the camera's on you, you know, when you're on the set. I mean, I look at the sort of natural reactions, and you know, when hardcore partisans either way are going to either complain or be happy. I think at the end of the day, though, this was about Joe Biden stopping the hemorrhaging, re-energizing the Democratic base. If that was his mission, that was actually mission accomplished.
I heard one of his advisors talk on talk radio saying if most of the criticism is about Joe Biden smiling too much, then I think we won.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, you know, he's got prettier teeth than you and I combined, I think, and so it doesn't hurt when you have a guy on TV smiling, even though the smile was kind of, I can't believe this guy's saying this stuff. You know?
All right, guys, let's move on. We still have a couple more presidential debates to go before Election Day. A town hall-style debate that will happen on Tuesday, October 16th. The final presidential debate will take place on Monday, October 22nd. Both will be aired live right here on RTV6. And after the break, there's a major issue facing the city of Indianapolis. What to do about the Department of Public Safety's budget shortfall? And do they make up for it out of the city's rainy day funds? Our panelists will talk about why this is a good or bad idea. Possibly more eyes on it than any other in Indiana is the race for Richard Lugar's U.S. Senate seat. Tomorrow night, Hoosier voters will get the chance to see the three candidates take part in their first debate. Republican Richard Murdoch, Democrat Joe Donnelly, and Libertarian candidate Andrew Horning will take on one another in a debate in Indianapolis. It's happening at the WFYI studios and will be aired live right here on RTV6 starting at 7 o'clock. We'll have full coverage of this debate and recap on RTV6 News at 11 tomorrow night. And that's it for this edition of Indianapolis This Week. Thank you for joining us. I'm Todd Connor. Have a great day.